Hey, nice to see you. I'm doing a little bit of late night stuff here, a little bit of catch up. Doing something different here because I have been reading Hatchet for Elena, and obviously Corey's not in here right now. He's still sleeping. I'm doing a Facebook Live deal right now because I ran out of space on my camera last time, and it was a bit of an issue. So I'm going to read on Facebook Live, and then I'll just be able to record it all, and people will be able to watch it as they wish. So, but I'm going to do it live, so I'll see some people coming in here. Maybe it's late on Friday night. It is 10:13 Mountain Time. We have had incredible fires this week, and the election is in full swing. And it is hey Valerie. It's just an interesting time. Elena's coming home. Julia's not even here right now. Julia is in North Carolina, enjoying a little bit of time at Cattail with her parents, and bringing our daughter home on Sunday. Nebraska, Big Ten football starts tomorrow, and thank God, yeah, Huskers! Yes, we hit football back finally. Thank God, yeah. So, actually, I have to finish reading this book. I got 4 chapters left. I'm gonna do 2 tonight, and I'll do 2 tomorrow, and it'll be special tomorrow. This is a little bit of a pre-game. I always watch College Game Day on Saturdays and kind of get going and stuff. Haven't really had a lot going on because obviously we haven't had Big Ten football, and the other football's boring. And so basically I need to get this book finished because Elena's coming home and I want to get it done before she gets back. So that means I got to do 2 chapters tonight, and I'll do 2 chapters tomorrow morning with Corey, doing a little bit of pregame. So I don't know how you feel about doing Fitzer Radio live on a Friday night, but we're going to do it. So if you don't want to hear a couple chapters at the end of Hatchet, then you can leave. Don't worry about it. But I'm going to read this book, and it's getting to the point where it's getting a little bit like I'm ready to finish Hatchet. You know what I mean? Like by the time hey Tanya, by the time the red fern grows was over in 5th grade, I was like ready to I was done. I was like, I would just finish this book. I'm ready to finish Hatchet. So, with Corey or without Corey. So, here we go. Everybody ready? Give me thumbs up. We're going to read this thing. We're going to finish. Okay. We're going to be, I should be hitting the hay. I should be doing something else right now, but I am reading Hatchet because I love my daughter, and this is going to live on forever and ever. And it's another chapter. So, Facebook Live. Nobody feel any pressure to watch or listen to this thing. I got to finish this book. So we are on chapter 15 of Hatchet. This is now at page 129, and we are moving on to page 150. So like I said, if you're drinking beer, doing something else, you don't need to sit here and listen to this. But if you want, go for it. So, you know what I say to that? I say, woo! What's up, Josh, Ron? It's been a while. Yeah, welcome to Fitzer Radio. Yeah, we do lots of fun stuff around here. If you haven't, I'm not even going to mess with that microphone right now. It's too complex. I just got to focus and get going reading this freaking book. Okay, all right, we're in chapter 15. Here we go. Get comfortable. Whew, okay. The days had folded one into another and mixed so that after 2 or 3 weeks, he had only knew time had passed in days because he made a mark for each day in stone near the door to his shelter. Real time he measured in events. A day was nothing, not a thing to remember. It was just sun coming up, sun going down, some light in the middle. Sounds like now, doesn't it? A little COVID. But events were burned into his memory, and so he used them to remember time, to know and to remember what had happened, to keep a mental journal. There had been the day of first meet. That's a good one. I get sucked into these things. Okay, focus, Chad. That had been a day that had started like the rest, up after the sun. Clean the camp, make sure there's enough wood for another night. But it was a long time of eating fish. Sorry, I'm on a roll. A lot of time eating fish and looking for berries, and he craved more food, heavier food, deeper food. He craved meat. He thought in the night now of meat. Thought of his mother's cooking a roast or dreamed of turkey, and one night he awakened before he had to put wood on the fire in his mouth. Oh no, that's sorry. Wood on the fire with his mouth making saliva and the taste of pork chops in his mouth. Focus. So real, and all a dream, but it left him intent on getting meat. He had been working farther and farther out for wood, sometimes now going nearly a quarter of a mile away from camp for wood, and he saw many small animals. Squirrels were everywhere. It's like our neighborhood. Small red ones that chattered at him and seemed to swear and jump from limb to limb. Sounds like our house. There were also many rabbits, same as here. Large gray ones with a mix of reddish fur, smaller, fast gray ones that he saw only at dawn. The larger ones sometimes sat until he was quite close, then bounded and jerked 2 or 3 times before freezing again. He thought if he worked at it and practiced, he might hit one of the larger rabbits with an arrow or a spear. Never the small ones or the squirrel. They were too small and too fast. Alex Masteller's watching. Nice, dude. We're reading some Hatchet. Joining in the fun. Reading this for my daughter, trying to get this thing finished. Big Ten football starting tomorrow. We're doing a little pre-game. Reading some Hatchet. Whew. Then there were the fool birds. They exasperated him to the point where they were close to driving him insane. The birds were everywhere, 5 and 6 in a flock. Their camouflage was so perfect that it was possible for Brian to sit and rest, leaning against a tree, with one of them standing right in front of him in a willow clump 2 feet away, hidden, only to explode into deafening flight just when Brian least expected it. He just couldn't see them, couldn't figure out how to locate them before they flew, because they stood so perfectly still and blended in so perfectly well. And what made it worse was that they were so dumb, or seemed to be so dumb, that it was nothing insulting the way they kept hidden from him, nor could he get used to the way they exploded up when they flew. It seemed like every time he went for wood, which was every morning, he spent the whole time jumping and jerking in fright as he walked. On one memorable morning, he had actually reached for a piece of wood, which he thought to be a pinchy stump at the base of a dead birch, his fingers close to touching it, only to have it blow up in his face. But on the day of first meet, goddamn, he had decided the best thing to try for would be a fool bird. And that morning he set out with his bow and spear to get one, to stay with until he got one and ate some meat, not to get wood, not to find berries, but to get a bird and get some meat. At first, the hunt had not gone well. He saw plenty of birds working up along the shore of the lake to the end, then down the other side, but he only saw them after they flew. He had to find a way to see them first, seize them and get close enough to either shoot them with his bow or use the spear. He could not find a way to see them. Alex, you like Hatchet? This is the first time I've ever read it. I've never read Hatchet. I just found it and I was like, I'm going to read this book. And everybody's like, oh yeah, I read that in 5th grade. I never read Hatchet. Anyway, we read Where the Red Fern Grows when I lived in Sherburne, Minnesota. That was what our class read. When I all felt bad. Hatchet's bringing me down a little bit. It's getting long. It's a tough thing. It's like freaking COVID, man. But anyway, when he had gone halfway around the lake and had jumped up 20 or so birds, he finally gave up and sat at the base of a tree. He had to work this out, see what he was doing wrong.
There were birds there. He had eyes. He just had to bring the two things together. Looking wrong, he thought. I am looking wrong. More than I am being wrong somehow. I am doing it the wrong way. Fine. Sarcasm came into his thoughts. I know that. Thank you. I know what I'm doing wrong, but what is right? The morning sun had cooked him until his brain was frying, sitting by the tree, but nothing came until he got up and started to walk again and hadn't gone 2 steps when a bird got up. It had been there all the time, while he was thinking about how to see them right next to him, right there. He almost screamed. But this time when the bird flew, something caught his eye, and it was the secret key. The bird cut down toward the lake, then seeing it couldn't land in the water, turned and flew back up the hill into the trees. When it turned, curving through the trees, the sun had caught it, and Brian, for an instant, saw it as a shape, sharp-pointed in front, back from the head, and streamlined bullet-shaped to the fat body. Kind of like a pear, he had thought, with a point on one end and a fat little body, a flying pear. And that had been the secret. He had been looking for feathers, for the color of the bird, for a bird sitting there. He had to look for the outline instead, had to see the shape instead of the feathers or color, had to train his eye to see the shape. It was like turning on a television. Suddenly he could see things he had never saw before. In just moments, it seemed, he saw 3 birds before they flew, saw them sitting and got close to one of them, moving slowly, got close enough to try and shot with his bow. He had missed that time and had missed many more, but he saw them. He saw the little fat shapes with the pointed heads sitting in the brush all over the place. Time and time again, he drew, held, and let arrows fly, but he still had no feathers on the arrows. They were more than that 6 that flopped out the bow, sometimes going sideways. Even when a bird was 7 or 8 feet away, the arrow would turn without feathers to stabilize it and hit brush or twig. After a time, he gave up with the bow. It had worked all right for the fish. When they came to the end of the arrow, it wasn't good for any kind of distance, at least not the way it was now. But he had carried his fish spear. The original one had 2 prongs, and he moved the bow to his left hand and carried the spear in his right. He tried throwing the spear, but he was not good enough and not fast enough. The birds could fly amazingly fast and get up, but in the end he found that if he saw the bird sitting and moved sideways toward it, not directly toward it, but at an angle back and forth, he could get close enough to put the spear point out ahead almost to the bird and lunge with it. He came close twice, and then down along the lake, not far from the beaver house, he got his first meat. The bird sat, and he had lunged, and the 2 points took the bird back down into the ground and killed it almost instantly. It had fluttered a bit, and Brian had grabbed it and held it in both hands until he was sure it was dead. Been there, done that. What's up, Steve? Wait, Steve Laser and Steve Zabel. That's like Steve squared. I love it. We're thick with Steves. I'm back to this. Okay. Then he picked up the spear and the bow and trotted back to the lake to his shelter, where the fire had burned down to glowing coals. He sat looking at the bird, wondering what to do. With the fish, he had just cooked them whole, left everything and picked the meat off. This was different. He would have to clean it. It had always been so simple at home. He would go to the store and get a chicken, and it was all cleaned and neat, no feathers or insides, and his mother would bake it in the oven and he would eat it. His mother from the old time, from the next time, would bake it. Now he had the bird, but he had never cleaned one, never taken the insides out or gotten rid of the feathers. Boy, isn't it funny, the guys that are on this thing right now, every one of you guys have done this. You've all cleaned birds. Steve, Alex, we've cleaned birds. We know what that's all about, don't we? Reeks, but they're good. Okay, now he had the bird, but he had never cleaned one, never taken the insides out or gotten rid of the feathers, and he didn't know where to start, but he wanted the meat. He had to have the meat. And that drove him. In the end, the feathers came off easily. He tried to pluck them out, but the skin was so fragile that it pulled off as well. So he just pulled the skin off the bird. Like peeling an orange, he thought, sort of, except that when the skin was gone, the insides fell out the back end. He was immediately caught in a cloud of raw odor. Ding, 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 ding. We know that one, don't we? Yeah. A kind of steamy dung odor that came up from the greasy coils of the insides that fell from the bird, and he nearly threw up. But there was something else to the smell as well. A kind of richness that went with his hunger and that overcame the sick smell. Alex, how do we overcome that smell? One word, dude, right? One word? Cigars. That's how we do that, right? That's how we do that. He quickly cut off the neck with his hatchet. Man, I got a knife sharpener online. I got COVID purchases where you just buy stuff. Webby, what's up? Where you've got like COVID purchases where you just go on Amazon randomly throughout the day, like, I think I'll buy a $75 cigars. I'll buy a $75 knife and outside tool sharpener. Man, I broke that thing out today. I was out in the garage. I was sharpening everything I have. I had stuff secondhand that had never been sharpened. I'm like sharpening my shears, and I bought a chipper. So I was chipping, adding into compost. Like, it was a good day. It was a good day. Webb says, did you build a room for this? No, man, this is Fitzer Radio. Yeah, it's Fitzer Radio, Webb. Like, you pay attention to go to YouTube and type in Fitzer Radio, and you're in for a world of surprise. There's hours of Fitzer Radio in there. Mostly me and my therapeutic buddy, Corny Corey. Everybody else knows who he is, but you'll figure out who he is. It's cool. You got a degree, man. You're a doctor. You got it. You'll figure it out. Oh my God, Jim Riley. Oh boy. Hey Jim, we're reading Hatchet. I got distracted. We were talking about cleaning birds. He just cut the neck off with the hatchet. And yeah, what's up, Webby? So I was talking about cutting my knives, and man, I got them sharp. I cut the neck off of a bird, a Canadian bird, right now. I'll tell you that. Anyway, back to it. He cut off the neck with his hatchet, cut the feet off the same way, and with his hand he held something like a small chicken with a dark, fat, thick breast and small legs. He set it up on some sticks on the shelter wall and took the feathers and insides down to the water to his fish pond. The fish would eat them. God, that's disgusting. Or eat what they could, and the feeding action would bring more fish. One second he thought he took out the wing and the tail feathers, which were stiff and long and pretty, banded with speckled and browns and grays and light reds. He might be some use for them, he thought. There might be some use for them, he thought. Maybe work them onto the arrows somehow. And if y'all think I'm like a caveman trying to read this book, I am. I realize that. It's like I reading out loud is really hard for me. It has been my entire life. And the only way you get over it is by doing it. And doing it publicly helps, nonetheless. But I gotta do it. It helps me out. But when I read like documents at work and stuff, it's like, technical documents, no problem whatsoever. Like high level GNSS, but like I can't read out loud. I'm reading Hatchet, and it's like a caveman trying to read this book. It's like I'm trying to clean my first chicken with my hatchet. It's like I have a hatchet in my brain to read books. Anyway, continue on. We're almost through this chapter, and then I got to take a quick break, and then we're gonna come back, and we're gonna do another chapter. And then tomorrow, fellers, is Husker Game Day, live here tomorrow morning with Corey. We're gonna finish this mofo, and there may be alcohol involved. So, anyway, back at it. The rest he threw in the water, saw a small round fish, began tearing at it, and washed his hands. Back at the shelter, the flies were on the meat, and he brushed them off. It was amazing how fast they came. But when he built up the fire and the smoke increased, the flies almost magically disappeared. He pushed a pointed stick through the bird and held it over the fire. The fire was too hot. The flames hit the fat, and the bird almost ignited. He held it higher, but the heat was worse, and finally he moved it to the side a bit, and there seemed to cook properly, except that it only cooked on one side and all the juice dripped off. He had to rotate it slowly, and that was hard to do with his hands, so he found a fork stick and stuck it in the sand to put his cooking stick in. He turned it, and in this way he found a proper method to cook the bird. In minutes, the outside was cooked, and the odor that came up was almost the same odor as when his mother baked chickens in the oven, and he didn't think to cook that he could stand it, but when he tried to pull a piece of breast meat off, the meat was still raw inside. Patience, he thought. So much of this was patience, waiting and thinking and doing things right. So much of all of living was patience and thinking. Hallelujah to that, brother. All right. Hey, Webb, we're going to beat Ohio State. He settled back, turning the bird slowly, letting the juices go back into the meat, letting it cook and smell and cook. And there came a time when it didn't matter if the meat was done or not. It was black on the outside and hard and hot. And he would eat it. He tore a piece from the breast, a sliver of meat, and put it in his mouth and chewed carefully, chewed as slowly and carefully as he thought he could get all the taste as he thought. That's good. People need to chew. You need to chew. Never in all the food, all the hamburgers and malts and all the fries or meals at home, never in all the candy or pies or cakes, never in all the roasts or steaks or pizzas, never in all the submarine sandwiches, never had he tasted anything as fine as that first bite. First meat. All right. Exactly. Who doesn't like breasts? That's what Jim Riley just says. It says it right there on the screen. And he's right. I like breast. If I had to choose a portion on a chicken, yeah, you say you prefer thighs. That's fine. I am not a fan of the thighs. I definitely am. I go right for the breast. Breast and legs. I do like chicken wings. 16. We're on page 138, or as Corey would say, 138. Right? We got anybody in here? Hey, we got Board. Oh my God. You guys ever met Board? Yeah, COVID friends. You need to start naming 2x4s, right? He's a little belligerent. He's a little jumpy. Chickens don't have boobs, dude. Not really. We can pretend they do, but it's okay. We have chickens here. 3 hens. This is like blasphemy. Oh, this is not a very long chapter. This is 38 to 49. My legs are tired here. Let me run between chapters. I'm going to adjust just a little bit. Oh. How's that? I don't ever sit up this way. I've been in here for too long. See that? Give myself some applause. All right. Yes, Webb. I built this as a booth. This is like my Fitzer radio booth. It's our old cedar closet. And Wolf Blitzer loves balls. Yeah. I'll eat Rocky Mountain oysters. I'm a Coloradoan. I'll do that. No. Stop it. Okay. All right. Here we go. Chapter 16. I got to get through. I really hope to God there's only 2 more chapters tomorrow because I need to finish this book, man. If you just came in late, Elena's coming home this weekend. She's been in North Carolina for the last 3.5 months, and Julia just flew there via Allegiant direct from Denver to Asheville with like a face mask and like a spacesuit or whatever you have to do to fly on a plane these days. And she ended up in Ash. She's now there. I haven't heard from her. She's probably gone like hiking. She's probably up in the mountains right now, but probably just enjoying the time with her daughter. I know she really, really missed Elena. She said she grew 1.5 inches in the last 3 months that she's been gone, which she's like a beanpole right now. Which, Elena, you're going to be watching this here soon enough. So, Adam Howard, party buddy. All right, we got a whole crew here. This is awesome. Hey, Adam, we are on chapter 16 of Hatchet. I'm trying to finish this mofo because Elena's coming home here in just a couple days, and I got to get this thing done. So we're going to finish this book up tomorrow morning with Corny Corey, and I got to get through one more chapter tonight. I do remember Christmas decorations 26 on our web. The deer on the house. Yeah, it's awesome. It's where I got the inspiration for all this stuff, right? I like pig butts. Got a little Chicago here going. And if you guys you ever seen my microphone live on Fitzer Radio? Here, let's see if we can turn it up a little bit. Can we get? I don't want to get any feedback. See, hunk of burning love. Yeah, you can do some serious Elvis impressions on this thing. It's a soundboard. Like I can play easy sax, or I can do. Here, guys, wait a minute. Can do a light show. Can do different lights. Mason, Webby. Can do green. Go back to. It's like a whole studio. I built a whole studio. A whole studio. Sorry. All right. If you need to see Fitzer Radio, you know, go to YouTube and put in Fitzer Radio, and you can see a whole bunch more of this. I'm just doing this live for the first time because I'm trying to finish this book, and it's long, and my video on my camera cuts off. It's easier to just do it with Facebook Live. And it's Friday night, so what the hell, right? So, anyway. All right. Focus, Chad. Chapter 16, Hatchet. Coming at you. Everybody ready? Hey, real quick. Webb, do you think Mason could read Hatchet? Do you think he could actually finish? Do you think he could read this book? Hopefully he's not on here. He'd kick my ass. Anyway. Matt Pifley. Whoa, nice, Matt. Appreciate it. All right, I'm going. Chapter 16 of Hatchet. And now he stood at the end of the long part of the lake. And I'm going to try and rip through this too, by the way. So, now he stood at the long part of the lake, and it was not the same. Would not be the same again. There had been many first days. First arrow day, when he had used thread from his tattered old piece of windbreaker and some pitch from a stump to put slivers of feathers on a dry pillow shaft and make an arrow that would fly correctly. Not accurately, he never got really good at it, but fly correctly so that if a rabbit or a fool bird sat in one place long enough, close enough, and he had enough arrows, he could hit it. That brought first rabbit day, when he killed one of the large rabbits with an arrow and skinned it as he had the first bird. Cooked at the same time to find the meat as good, not as rich as the bird, but still good, and there were strips of fat on the back of the rabbit that he cooked into meat to make it richer. Now he went back and forth between rabbit and fool birds when he could, filling it with fish in the middle. Always hungry, but I can do it now. I can get food, and I know I can get food, and it makes me more. I know what I can do. He moved closer to the lake to stand of nut brush. Really? These were thick bushes with little stickler pods that held green nuts he thought he might be able to eat, but when they weren't ripe yet. He was out for a fool bird, and they liked to hide at the base of the thick part of the nut brush, back where the stems were close together and provided cover. In the second clump, he saw a bird, move close to it, paused when the head feathers came up, and it made a sound like a cricket. No, not a cricket, I thought it was a cricket. And a sign of alarm just before it flew. Then moved closer when the feathers went down and the bird relaxed. He did this 4 times, never looked at the bird directly, moving toward it at an angle so that it seemed he was moving off to the side. He had perfected this method after many attempts, and it worked so well that he had actually caught one with his bare hands until he was standing less than 3 feet from the bird, which was frozen in a hiding attitude, not altitude, you moron, attitude in the brush. The bird held for him, and he put an arrow to the bow, one of the feathered arrows, not a fish arrow, and drew it and released. It was a clean miss, and he took another arrow out of the cloth pouch at his belt, which he'd made from a piece of his windbreaker sleeve, tied at one end to make a bottom. The fool bird had sat for him, and he did not look directly at it until he drew the second arrow and aimed and released and missed again. This time the bird jerked a bit, and the arrow stuck next to it so close it almost brushed its breast. Brian only had 2 more arrows and debated moving slowly to change the spear over to his right hand and use that to kill the bird. One more shot, he decided he would try it again. He slowly brought another arrow out, putting it on the string, and aimed and released, and this time saw the flurry of feathers that meant that he had hit it. The bird had been struck off center and was flopping around wildly. Brian jumped on it and grabbed it and slammed it against the ground once sharply to kill it. Then he stood and retrieved his arrows and made sure they were all right and went down to the lake to wash the blood off his hands. He kneeled at the water's edge and put the dead bird and his weapon down and dipped his hands into the water. It was very nearly the last act of his life. Later, he would not know why he started to turn or smell or sound. A tiny brushing sound or something caught his ear or nose, and he began to turn and had his head half around when he saw a brown wall of fur detach itself from the forest to his rear and come down to the lake like a runaway truck. Oh boy. He just had time to see that it was a moose. He knew them from pictures and could not guess how large they were when it hit him. It was a cow and she had horns, but she took him in the left side of the back with her forehead, took him and threw him out into the water, and then came after him to finish the job. He had another half second to fill his lungs with the air, and she was on him again until her head to drive him down into the mud to the bottom. Insane, he thought. Ow. Yeah, give me some what? Okay. Insane. Just that, the word insane. Mud filled his eyes, his ears. The horn boss. Who writes this stuff, man? I can't read. Okay. Just that. The word insane. Mud filled his eyes, his ears. The horn boss on the moose drove him deeper and deeper into the bottom muck, and suddenly it was over and he felt alone. He sputtered to the surface, sucking air and fighting panic, and when he wiped the mud and water out of his eyes, he cleared them and saw the cow standing sideways to him, not 10 feet away, calmly chewing on a lily pad root. She didn't even appear to see him, didn't seem to care about him. And Brian turned carefully and began crawling out of the water. As soon as he moved, the hair on her back went up and she charged at him again, using her head and front hooves this time, slamming him back and down into the water on his back this time, and he screamed the air out of his lungs and hammered on her head with his fists and filled his throat with water, and she left again. Once more he came to the surface, but he was hurt now, hurt inside, hurt in his ribs, and he stayed hunched over, pretended to be dead. She was standing again, eating. Brian studied her out of one eye, looking to the bank with the other, wondering how seriously he was injured, wondering if she would let him go this time. Insane. He started to move ever so slowly. Her head turned and her back hair went up like the hair on an angry dog, and she stopped, took a slow breath. The hair went down and she ate. Move, hair up, stop, hair down, move, hair up, a half foot at a time until she was at the edge of the water. He stayed on his hands and knees. Indeed, was hurt, so he wasn't sure he could walk anyway, and she seemed to accept that and let him crawl slowly out of the water and up into the trees and the brush. When he was behind a tree, he stood carefully and stood stock. Legs seemed all right, but his ribs were hurt bad. He could only take short breaths, and then he had a jabbing pain, and his right shoulder seemed to be wrenched somehow. Also, his bow and spear and fool bird were in the water. At least he could walk, and he just about decided to leave everything when the cow moved out into deeper water and left him. As quickly as she'd come, walking down along the shoreline in the shallow water, with her long legs making sucking sounds when she pulled them free from the mud. Hanging on a pine limb, he watched her go, half expecting her to turn and come back to the water to run him over again. But she kept going, and when she was well gone from sight, he went to the bank and found the bird, then waded out a bit to get his bow and spear. Neither of them were broken, and the arrows, incredibly, were still left in his belt in the pouch, although messed up with mud and water. It took him almost an hour to work his way back around the lake. His legs worked well enough, but if he took 2 or 3 fast steps, he would begin to breathe deeply, and the pain from his ribs would stop him, and he would have to lean against a tree until he could slow back down to shallow breathing. She had done more damage than he had originally thought. The insane cow. No sense at all to it, just madness. When he got to the shelter, he crawled inside and was grateful that the coals were still glowing and that he had thought to get wood first thing in the morning to be ready for the day. Grateful that he had thought to get enough wood for 2 or 3 days at a time. Grateful that he had fish nearby if he needed to eat. Gratefully, finally, as he dozed off, that he was alive. So insane, he thought, letting sleep cover the pain in his chest. Such an insane attack for no reason, and he fell asleep with his mind trying to make the moose have reason. Is there such a thing, Jason? Can a moose have reason? The noise awakened him. It was a low sound, a low roaring sound that came from wind. His eyes snapped open, not because it was loud, but because it was new. He had felt wind in his shelter, felt the rain that came with wind, and had heard thunder many times in the past 47 days, but not this noise. Low, almost alive, almost from a throat. Somehow the noise was a roar, a far-off roar, but coming at him. And when he fully awake, he sat up in the darkness, grimacing from the pain from his ribs. The pain was different now, a tightened pain, and it seemed less, but the sound, so strange, he thought. A mystery sound, a spirit sound, a bad sound. He took some small wood and got the fire going again, felt some little comfort and cheer from the flames, but also felt that he should get ready. He did not know how, but he should get ready. The sound was coming for him, just for him, and he had to get ready. The sound wanted him. He found the spear and bow where they were hanging on the pages of the shelter wall and brought his weapons to the bed he had made of pine boughs. More comfort, but like the comfort of the flames, it didn't work with this new threat that he yet didn't understand. Restless threat, he thought, and stood out of the shelter away from the flames to study the sky, but it was too dark. The sound meant something to him, something from his memory, something he had read about, something he had seen on television, something, he thought. Oh no. It was wind like the sound of a train, with a low belly roar of a train. It was a tornado. That was it. The roar of a train meant bad wind, and it was coming for him. God, he thought, on top of the moose, not this. But it was too late to do anything. In the strange stillness, he looked to the night sky. He turned back to his shelter and was leaning over to go through the door opening when it hit. Later, he would think of it and find that it was the same as the moose, just insanity. He was taken in the back by some mad force and driven into the shelter on his face, slammed down into the pine branches of his bed. At the same time, the wind tore at the fire and sprayed red coals and sparks in a cloud around him. Then it backed out, seemed to hesitate momentarily, and returned with a massive roar, a roar that took his ears and mind and body. He was whipped against the front wall of the shelter like a rag, felt a ripping pain in his ribs, then was hammered back down into the sand once more while the wind took the whole wall, his bed, the fire, his stools, all of it, and threw it out into the lake, gone out of sight, gone forever. He felt a burning on his neck and reached up to find red coals there. He brushed those off, found more in his pants, brushed those away, and then the wind hit again, heavy gusts, tearing gusts. He heard trees snapping in the forest around the rock, felt his body slipping out, and clawed at the rocks to hold himself down. He couldn't think. He just held and knew he was praying, but didn't know what the prayer was. Knew that he wanted to be, stay, and be, and then the great wind moved to the lake. Right. Cuddy! Welcome. Brian Cuddy, everybody. Old college buddy. Reading Hatchet for the girl, for Elena. She's coming home here soon enough. A couple days.
little pregame. We're going to finish this book tomorrow morning, Cuddy. I'm going to do a little pregame with pregame with Corey, my therapeutic buddy, my little corn cob that I rescued from Iowa from a truck stop. Just look up Fitzer Radio on YouTube. You'll get it. Anyway, back to Hatchet. Tornado? Really? Have you guys bought into this whole tornado thing? Is it really a tornado in Canada? Okay. This is in Nebraska, I'd believe it. Anyway. Tornado tore one more time. The tornado tore one more time at the shore on the opposite side of the lake. Brian could hear trees being ripped down, and then it was gone as rapidly as it had come. It left nothing but Brian in the pitch dark. He could find nothing of where his fire had been, not a spark, nothing of his shelter, tools, or bed. Even the body of the fool bird was gone. I'm back to nothing, he thought, trying to find things in the dark, back to where I was when I crashed. Hurt, in the dark, just the same. As if to emphasize his thoughts, the mosquitoes, with the fire gone and protective smoke no longer saving him, came back in thick, nostril-clogging swarms. That sounds delightful. All that was left was the hatchet on his belt, still there, but now it began to rain, and the downpour would never find anything. Jesus, this guy can't win. Night, Alex. This guy can't win. What a crappy afternoon. Gets attacked by a moose, has to live through a tornado, and now he's getting attacked by swarms of mosquitoes. At least he's got his hatchet. Good Lord. And then a downpour. What's next? His girlfriend's going to break up with him? Anyhow. Okay. You're funny thing to get enough to get a fire going, and at last he pulled his battered body back in under the overhang where his bed had been and wrapped his arms around his ribs. Sleep couldn't come with the insects ripping at him, so he lay the rest of the night slapping mosquitoes and chewing with his mind on the day. This morning he had been fat, well, almost fat and happy, sure of everything, with good weapons and food and the sun in his face and things looking good for the future. And inside of one day, just one day, he had been run over by a moose and a tornado and lost everything and was back to square one, just like that. A flip of some giant coin, and he was the loser. But there is a difference now, he thought. There really is a difference. I might be hit, but I'm not done, said Scott Frost, hopefully, to the world. When the light comes, I'll start to rebuild. I'll still have the hatchet, and that's all I had in the first place. Come on, he thought, baring his teeth in the darkness. Come on. Is this the best you can do? Is that all you can hit me with? A moose and a tornado? Well, he thought, holding his ribs and smiling and then spitting mosquitoes out of his mouth. Well, that won't get the job done. That was the difference now. He had changed. He was tough. I'm tough when it counts. Tough in the head. In the end, right before dawn, a kind of cold snap came. Oh my God. See you, man. Bye, Cuddy. Good Lord. In the end, right before the dawn, a kind of cold snap came down. Something else new. This cold snap, and the mosquitoes settled back into the damp grass and under the leaves, and he could sleep or doze. And at last he thought he had the morning. As he closed his eyes, was, I hope the tornado hit the moose. Yeah! That's a good one. See, Cuddy, you even read, well, Cuddy's gone. Cuddy even read this book. Like, I didn't ever read this book. He just found it on a shelf and read it. He's like, oh yeah, I read it in 5th grade. I never read this book. Anyway. Okay, how are we at here? We're almost done. This is all we got left for tonight, folks. That's all we got left, and then we'll do a cool closeout, and we'll get ready for tomorrow. Okay, bear with me. When he awakened, the sun was cooking the inside of his mouth, and it dried his tongue to leather. He had
He'd fallen into a deeper sleep with his mouth open just at dawn, and it tasted as if he had been sucking on his foot all night.
That's when you say, where's the cat? Right, Webb? And what's the answer? What cat? The cat that shit in my mouth. Oh, sorry, I just said the S word in front of a bunch of kids. The cat that pooped in my mouth. That's what you say when you have really bad breath in the morning. Anyway, that's an old and a goodie from back in the day. On Sunday mornings, we're about ready to go to Chinese buffet, right? Remember that?
He rolled out and almost bellowed with pain from his ribs. They had tightened in the night and seemed to pull at his chest when he moved. He slowed his movements and stood slowly without stretching unduly and went to the lake for a drink. At the shore, he kneeled carefully and with great gentleness and drank and rinsed his mouth. To his right, he saw that the fish pond was still there, although the willow gate was gone and there were no fish. They'd come back, he thought. As soon as I can make a spear or bow and get one or two for bait, they'll come back. He turned to look at his shelter, saw that some of the wood for the wall was scattered around the beach, but was still there. And when he saw his bow jammed into a driftwood log, broken but with the precious string still intact, not so bad now, not so bad. He looked down at the shoreline for other parts of his wall, and that's when he saw it. Out in the lake, in the short part of the L, something curved and yellow was sticking 6 or 8 inches out of the water. It was bright color, not an earth or natural color, and for a second he could not place it, and then he knew what it was then he knew what it Speak! Then he knew it for what it was. It's the tail of a plane, he said out loud, half expecting to hear somebody answer him. There it was, sticking up out of the water. The tornado must have flipped the plane around somehow when it hit the lake, changed the position of the plane, and raised the tail. Well, he thought, well, just look at that. And at the same moment, a cutting thought hit him. He thought of the pilot still in the plane, and that brought a shiver and massive sadness that seemed to settle on him like a weight. And he thought that he should say or do something for the pilot, some words, but he didn't know any of the right words, the religious words. So he went down to the side of the water and looked at the plane and focused in his mind the way he did when he was hunting the fool birds and wanted to concentrate, focused it on the pilot and thought, have rest forever. Okay, we are done for the night, kids. Who we still got here? Somebody pop up. Who we still got? Who's still out there? Who's still listening? Elaine, I know you're listening. You're going to be listening to this at some point. Anybody that wants to listen to the rest of Hatchet, but who else is out there? Who we got? Come on, Webby. You still there? Damn it. I just figured out we got 3 more chapters? Come on, man. Seriously? Yeah. All right, I gotta get from page 150 to 177, and then there's an epilogue, which I think I'll probably read it. Yeah, it's pretty short. We're gonna do this all tomorrow morning. So I got some other stuff going on. And if anybody's interested in joining me tomorrow morning, it's the morning of Saturday, October 24th tomorrow. Huskers play at Ohio State, and we'll see what they got. So just glad to have football back that I actually care about. So had the Tour de France earlier, and now Husker football is coming on mid-October. So go Big Red. All right, everybody. Talk to you later. Have a good one. See ya.